Welcome to Real Vision Crypto. I'm Ash Bennington. I'm joined today by Jake Udell, founder and CEO of Metalink, to talk about NFTs, Web3, and the Metaverse. Jake, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Ash. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. Jake, before we get started talking about Metalink and what you guys are doing there, which I think is interesting, tell me a little bit about your background. You have an interesting background to start with.
Yeah, thanks for saying so. I've always been a community builder. I started my first business when I was 13 years old, chasing athletes and celebrities outside their hotels, getting their autographs and selling them on eBay. And we used to tape cameras to our head to prove we actually got the autograph. So I should have invented the GoPro, but I wasn't that smart. But I pivoted from there. I believed, if you could do well with that, you could probably do well with anything, financially at least. So I set out to become a rapper. And then I pivoted from being a rapper. Luckily, every rapper has a side hustle, and mine was online marketing. And so I pivoted to becoming a music manager. And so I managed all sorts of different recording artists. And then I flew out for Spotify's. I was a speaker at Spotify's 10th anniversary, and kind of realized that human beings don't scale. So like music management wasn't as interesting to me as actually technology. And so I pivoted again and joined community.com as their head of activation. It's kind of like a MailChimp of text messaging. And at the time, they didn't really have any customers or anything like that. And so I got them their initial customer base, and then we raised a lot of money. And then we wound up launching phone numbers for Barack Obama, Jennifer Lopez, Diddy. If you've ever seen somebody on Instagram, like, here's my phone number, text me. That was our company. And then at some point, I realized that the whole reason I was at Community was actually being solved by crypto, and that I needed to be in crypto, and that was going to be really where I made my legacy. So here I am.
Yeah, a couple of really interesting threads there. It's community, it's culture coming together. As we said at the top of the show about NFTs, specifically Web3, and increasingly the Metaverse. Tell us a little bit about Metalink. What was the problem that you set out to solve?
Yeah, great question. So I think that there was two trends that were going on at the same time that were really fascinating to me. The first one was because community.com had grown, from 0 to 27 million users in 2 years, I became really fascinated by conversational commerce.
By the way, recap for people who may not be familiar with community.com, what you guys did.
So we went out and did direct deals with AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile to enable 1 million text messages to be sent from one 10-digit phone number in under 3 or 4 minutes. So if you were a recording artist and you were going on tour, you could say, hey, I'm going on tour. Here's the ticket link. And you could basically avoid the algorithms because the phone number is the one true atomic unit of identity. Every 5 years, there's going to be another TikTok, another Instagram, another Twitter. They're going to have their own policies and algorithms. And over time, those platforms change and evolve. Like when I started, Facebook was all the rage. And now having a big Facebook following isn't even that relevant or important. And even though Facebook owns Instagram, you can't take your followers with you from Facebook to Instagram. And these are all things that I think that blockchain is going to solve, which I'm really excited about. But at Community, we said, all right, the one way that you can reach your fans instantly and directly is through text message. So we went out and, we did it for big celebrities I just mentioned. We also did it for corporate brands like White Claw, Weight Watchers, People Magazine, where we would allow them to reach their fans via text message. And so one of the things I became fascinated with is if somebody like Obama's new book was coming out, what if instead of sending an Amazon link, he could literally send something where you could buy his book via text message, literally without having to go to the World Wide Web or having to open up your browser. You could literally just do it right there. And I thought that China had leapfrogged us in technology. They'd proven through WeChat the real power of conversational commerce. And I was wondering when that was actually going to come to America, because in America, we believe that WhatsApp, iMessage, Messenger over here, PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App are over there, just completely segregated. And I believe that chat and payments are going to become synonymous with each other. And it made me start to believe that social and crypto were also going to be synonymous with each other. And I started to look at the way, conversations were happening at those companies, the different things publicly they had put out, privately information, we had gotten about how they were thinking about those things. And I kind of realized that I did not believe that those companies were going to be at the center of conversational commerce. And it made me believe that even though the elephant in the room is that nobody needs another chat app, I started to think that the opportunity was big enough that just maybe it was worth going after. And so we did. And that was the one trend. There was another one too, if you want to hear the other trend that kind of led to it, but that was one of the
Yeah,
big ones.
please.
Yeah, the second one was the decentralization of social media. So this idea that you could take your followers with you from one platform to the next, that you could own your posts, own your social data. This was stuff that was, still in its big infancy right now. We talk about, and most of the time I'm sure we'll spend on this podcast talking about the ownership of NFTs or the ownership of cryptocurrency and tokens, and everyone's talking about that, but nobody's really talking about the way that blockchain will be used to own this, personal social data, and where we can actually own real estate around the connections that we've made in the real world, in the metaverse, in a way that we just today do not own because they are owned by big tech companies. And that was something that I just always had a problem with, because if you are the Black Eyed Peas and you're playing at the Super Bowl and you have all these fans, but then 2 years later, Facebook doesn't let you reach these fans, that
Right.
just never sat well with me. And I always thought that the artist, the small business, should own their ability to reach their customers and their fans. And I believe that, blockchain will eventually solve that.
Yeah, social media platforms, especially Facebook/Meta, have been very successful at monetizing
Yes.
ultimately the relationships that exist peer to peer, particularly, as you say, between influencers, content creators, brands, and their fans. However, left out of the loop, of course, is the capacity for people to monetize their own content and to monetize their own creative output.
Absolutely. They make all the rules, right? And I believe that they, as a platform, they have that right. But I also believe you should have the ability to decide how your posts are used and decide how this data is used. And also, like I said before, own your followers, like literally own the ability to reach them is something that I'm just incredibly passionate about. And so the inspiration for Metalink came from those two trends that I was noticing.
Yeah, in many ways, this conversation really is about the transformation of Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. Tell us a little bit about what your view is, how you define Web 3.
Yeah, I think that, Web 1 was how we interact with information. It was a recipe on a website. Web 2 was how we interact with each other, social media, e-commerce. And Web 3 is how we interact with value,
Right.
and how the actual, currency of things that we didn't know even had a currency. Like you look at Wikipedia and it's like, this free service, but in reality, I think it would be one of the most it already is one of the most valuable in terms of page views in Web 2, but financially, it's not one of the most valuable entities in the world. But in Web 3, there's sort of these different monetization mechanisms that we've never seen before, and how people actually view value and can actually create value when the blockchain gets involved. And so I think Web 3 is sort of that change in how we think about value and aligned stakeholdership. If you are a customer of Target and you work at Target and you own a share of stock at Target, those things are probably coincidentally so. Whereas when you look at
Right.
cryptocurrency in Web3, it's like I am a builder on Ethereum. I own NFTs on Ethereum. I also own the Ethereum itself. Like there's kind of this aligned stakeholdership that in Web2 was never really possible or never really thought about, that tokens enable.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the framework and the philosophy. Tell us a little bit about what Metalink does
Yeah.
today.
So Metalink's goal is to be the most secure and easy way to talk, track, and eventually transact NFTs. And so we started just as a private chat app for CryptoPunks. We didn't know if anybody was going to join. I didn't really know any CryptoPunk owners at the time, so it was kind of nervous at the beginning. And we put it out, and in the first 48 hours, over 15% of CryptoPunks joined and started chatting. And that was
Mm.
sort of the beginning of, okay, maybe there's something really here. This is kind of interesting. And so that was sort of the beginning. And we've kind of realized that we really want to make it easier for people to track their portfolios and the announcements around these NFT collections they own, to kind of provide the signal through the noise for collectors of NFTs in Web3. And that's really what we're focused on right now. We have our mobile app coming out next month, and that's going to
Yeah.
be a big push for us.
Well, here's what's interesting to me about what you guys are doing. It's the verifiability component
Mm.
of this. As you said earlier, to answer your own question, who needs another chat app? This idea, I know that I imagine people are listening thinking, well, what's the difference between what you guys are doing and Discord? Talk a little bit about that verifiability component, because that I think is really the core of what's interesting here and what you're doing.
Mm. Yeah, there were definitely some really key differentiation points. One was that you are signing in with your wallet.
Right.
So, you are verifying, hey, I actually own this CryptoPunk. If I don't own this CryptoPunk, it's not going to let me in the chat. And then I have to be one of my CryptoPunks in the CryptoPunk chat. And then most importantly, is that you can click on any individual's username and see the NFTs that they own. So I think we were we were the first place on the internet where you could see what somebody owns and message them at the same time. That really hadn't been done before.
Right.
And then the other thing too is when you look at Discord, you're able to get like messages from anybody at any time, or you have to just shut off your DMs completely. We just took the Twitter approach and created like a DM request inbox where you are able to get these DMs in a separate inbox, and then you're able to decide whether they enter your main inbox or not. Whereas Discord just has this like endless flow of random spam contest messages where, you're one click away from getting hacked and losing your entire portfolio. It's not like they're not the ones that when I say Discord has these are random people on Discord. It's not like
Right.
Discord sending these messages, but this is the reality of playing on a Web2 platform like that. Whereas I think with Web3, we've kind of built in a way where we think it's going to be more sustainable long term for the way that we think about digital asset ownership and how that creates access. Right now, today it's to chat. Today Metalink is this 2D chat, but over time we're actually building the 3D interoperability so that as NFTs become so much more than they are today. Right today, they're kind of in many ways overblown JPEGs with little to no utility. But over time, they're going to eventually embody our identity, our property, our access to the metaverse. And Metalink
Right.
wants to be there to empower the discovery and access of these experiences.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Obviously, this space that you're working in, it's incredibly, incredibly early. Lots of very speculative assets. You can see this in terms of the way the valuations bounce around on NFTs, for example.
Mm.
But it's really interesting because you start to sort of plant the seeds for some of these points that you've laid out for us. I would think of it in terms of value, trust, and identity being
Mm.
integrated into the applications in a decentralized way. This
I love that.
potentially, as we look out over, whatever the time horizon is, 1, 3, 5 years, has the potential to really change the way that people interact with these networks and with each other.
Mm. Yeah. How do you think about it in terms of the way that when you see those changes, what are the ones that get you most excited?
Well, I think of this. It's great. I don't usually don't answer the questions, but it's a good one because it's something that I think about all the time. To me, all these changes that we're talking about are very much part and parcel of a 25-year revolution that we've seen in the web. I think of this as an extension of some of the things that we've seen come before, whether it's e-commerce or verified third-party identity. I think of this as effectively creating a network that has this functionality built into it and built in a decentralized, distributed, peer-to-peer way,
Mm.
so that there aren't organizations that essentially have the potential to harvest all of this value for their own shareholders, which is great if you're a founder or an early investor, but less good if you're a participant in the network. So I think of this as being an incredibly democratizing force, potentially for this digital world that we find ourselves in right now. That said, obviously the valuations are just all over the place. We see,
Yeah.
things that are blowing up 10x, 100x, 1000x, and then crash down 99% the week later. So, it's really interesting when we have these conversations to talk about the ideals of this space, the potential for where this could go, while at the same time, I think of it this way. I say that I'm, incredibly optimistic about the technology. I'm always agnostic about price, and I'm incredibly cynical about human nature.
Mm. Mm. Wow. It makes so much sense when you said the 25 years of the internet.
Yeah.
It reminds me of thinking about the iPhone, right? And there was plenty of sort of iPhone attempts. None of them obviously as elegant as what Steve Jobs and excellent as what Steve Jobs wound up rolling out. But it's
Right.
interesting how by the time the iPhone came out, we all knew how to work the phone, work the camera, work the internet. Steve Jobs came and put it in our pocket. When for years people were trying to develop similar devices, I think
Right.
when we look at Web3 and the metaverse, it's going to be a lot about timing. This is a brand new behavior. How long until the technology's there? It's easily accessible. The world is ready for it.
Right.
I always think about, how far we've come. You think about having to, back in the day, like run your own node versus now, you can use MetaMask. And I remember being at a lunch at Bitcoin Miami, and Keith Grossman from Time was saying that his grandmother one day, his 80-year-old grandmother called him one day and said, Keith, you got to get me on the Twitter. And she's
Hmm.
probably never going to say that about MetaMask. So we have a
Right.
long way to go, but we also can't remember how far we've come from running your own node. And so this technology
Totally.
is just growing so quickly. It's really exciting to see what's going to actually be possible.
Yeah, so many important points there. I agree with just the general framework that you're laying out. I mean, I think, first of all, with the iPhone, time is the hidden variable. If you remember when you got your first iPhone, it was actually kind of crappy in terms of what it could do. It was revolutionary because it had this sort of
No App
elegant
Store.
touch screen. Yeah.
No App Store. Steve Jobs did not want the App Store, which is so crazy. I
Right.
was reading about that a few weeks ago. He did not want
Yeah.
it. Sorry, I
And
didn't
by
mean
the
to.
way, he also hated large iPhones. He called them SUVs derisively. He thought it was silly. He wanted like this, 3.5 inch screen. I mean, all of these things, the time is the hidden variable. These things evolve and you don't really know. It's the quote that Steve Jobs, I think, attributed to Henry Ford. I don't know if it's accurate, but this idea that if you ask people what they wanted, they would have said they wanted a faster horse,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you never really know this path dependency. It's impossible to figure out the exact direction that things are going to go in. But the other thing that you mentioned that I think is so critical when you talk about, I always say that my mom doesn't have a MetaMask wallet, nor does she want one.
Right.
UI UX is something that's so important in the space, and it's something that seems to be dramatically neglected. People like you and me who love this stuff are interested in it. We're having this conversation now. We've got probably thousands of people who are listening to us who also love it. But then you go to a party and you talk to, one of your friends who's like an accountant or a cardiologist, and they go, "What is this Web3 stuff again? I don't know." I literally, like, we forget that we just have these conversations with ourselves. And I think a lot of that is because of the user experience, the user interface is really meant for people with programming backgrounds right now.
Yeah, we've tried with Metalink to be more consumer friendly than that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the login is a barrier because if you don't have a MetaMask, but once you're inside, I think that's been one of the reasons. We have at this point over 80,000 connected wallets to our platform. And I think it's one of the reasons why people have been fascinated by what we're doing is because we do focus on that consumer side of it. At the beginning of this, when you asked the inspiration, a lot of the inspiration for Metalink was the deep tech side of things. Like, how do you control your followers? How do you do that stuff? That doesn't mean Metalink's necessarily going to build it. Where Metalink sees our role in the ecosystem as companies like Spruce ID, for example, build the Ethereum authentication standard and build the ability to have your followers live inside of your wallet. How do we
Right.
become one of those premier vehicles by which this amazing deep technology actually reaches the rest of the world? And so, we really believe that if we can build very simple application around NFTs where you can easily discover these experiences and engage in different ways, almost is like a necessity to getting into this space, the way you have to download MetaMask. We hope that we can eventually provide enough value where we're just part of the ecosystem of something that you're just going to want to have if you're playing actively in the space. And hopefully we can make it simple enough. We have a long way to go in order to do that, but it's definitely a big goal of ours to be one of the projects at the forefront of being consumer friendly because we really view ourselves as that sort of B2C play where we want to grow the actual audience completely. And today, obviously, we don't do it. Today, we're targeting the big NFT collectors. But over time, as we get their support and we really provide more value to them, I would hope that we can expand out to bring more people into our awesome space.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to ask you a really fun question.
Okay, I'm
So
ready
if
for it.
if money and time were no object, you could get as many developers as you want, and you
Oh, wow.
had 1 to 3 years to think about it, maybe 5 years. What do you think this world might look like 5 years from now if you were able to build and develop and create the functionality and the kinds of communities that you're most passionate about?
Wow. And this is specifically for Metalink or the world in general?
Well, Metalink and the world in general, because I know you're focusing on it through that lens.
Well, I think for us, if it was unlimited time and unlimited money, it would be the actual mission of the company. So I said the vision. The vision was that it'd be the most secure and easy way to talk, track, and transact NFTs. But the underlying mission is enabling individuals to own their connected experiences across the internet, from payments to social and everything in between.
Right.
So the goal would be that if you were to access the metaverse, you would be able to traverse the metaverse as easy as clicking on one chat or another chat and just move around in this sort of space. And over time, for this actual space itself to become community owned and operated and decentralized. I remember talking to Eddie Lazarin over at A16Z, and he was saying that the idea of the metaverse to him was this concept that you actually could meet people freely without anybody getting in between you, no intermediary. So what does that mean? If you and I run into each other on the street and we go to shake each other's hands, we can do that without any intermediary. But even this call we're on right now, there's some tech platform that's enabling you and I to speak, that's between, in some ways, you and I, that's controlling the different things we can do with this platform. And I believe that his instincts around what that metaverse could actually be is very inspiring. And so Metalink would hope to become one of those companies that can help usher in that change by enabling people to truly own those connected experiences they have. Connected experience being where you're tied to your wallet, and your wallet is serving as your identity, and that you would be able to make sure that anything you do in this space is actually owned by you as the individual, and the actual space itself is community owned and operated.
Yeah, that's really interesting. First, let's start a little bit with your definition of what the metaverse is. It sounds broader than just a technology. You think of it perhaps as more of a broader social, cultural, economic system or framework. What makes the metaverse the metaverse?
It's a very great question. My belief is that gaming is going to be the metaverse, and that gaming's kind of been eating the world for the last 2 decades, right? The gaming industry is larger than music, movies, and TV combined. It is massive. And when you talk to young people, you can tell it's not slowing down anytime soon. Now, if you look at the gaming industry, they've had a precarious relationship with crypto, blockchain, NFTs, both on the actual company side as well as the gamers themselves. You remember when Discord said, "Hey, we may do something in Web3. Here's a potential wallet integration," and their community was like, "No way, we're going to go to Slack. No, we hate NFTs." It reminds me so much of early days of the internet, right, where people just say, "Hey, we hate the internet. We don't believe this is going to do anything," and well, it did. And I think blockchain's the same way. Now, when I look at when you say what is the metaverse, the 3 largest gaming funds that have ever been put together, I've spoken to all of them. They are investing, all 3 of them, over 50% of the funds they've raised into blockchain gaming. So my belief is that the metaverse will eventually, now you're hearing all these companies, "Hey, we're developing a AAA game. We're developing a AAA game." AAA games take 7 to 10 years to develop. This is not something you can raise money and say is coming out next year. It's just not realistic. It's never been done before. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but I do believe that there will be these AAA games that, whether they're full metaverse or they're sort of this mix of AR and almost like Pokemon Go on a different level, I think is still really TBD. But I believe that gaming will be how future generations interpret the metaverse, which by the time the metaverse is here, it's probably the future generations is really what this is all about. The same way the internet was really, probably the generation above me and my, the millennial generation, there wasn't, people that were older than that. Sure, they got to play cards on the internet with their friends, but it wasn't necessarily, by the way, I don't mean to be ageist there. I'm sure they could set up eBay auctions just like I could at age 13. But I don't think that it changed their careers because their careers were likely over.
Yeah, it is so interesting. I've heard people talk about gaming almost as an operating system for the metaverse, as a sort of a framework, a pass through, a portal for accessing what the metaverse may look like in the future. It's interesting to me whenever I talk to people over 50, many of whom are running traditional Wall Street investment vehicles and firms. They never talk about gaming. The data are so clear in terms of the dollar value of this sector, and yet it just doesn't seem like it gets any of the pickup, respect, or even notice for people who are outside the space. It's fascinating to me.
It is, and I think it's most fascinating when you look at a few of the the elements of it. Number one, the growth year over year over year. Number
Yep.
two, the amount of money that is spent, it speaks for itself as you're kind of referencing. And number
Yeah.
three, and probably most importantly, is how much time is spent. So you think about
Yes.
like the amount of people that spend time watching like binging Netflix versus the people that just play video games all day. And video games all day is just so much more dominant than listening to like music or play. It so controls all of those aspects in ways that, yeah, it's kind of undeniable. I'm not a gamer, by the
Yeah.
way, so for me, it's a bit of a it's something that I am looking at that data and saying, oh wow, this is very real. And if the funds are going to be going into these companies, then this is going to happen. And how does Metalink be a place where, if you're playing a game and you need a place to talk about the assets that you're winning in that game, you need a place to display them, you need a place to transact them. How do we become that all-in-one environment that across gaming ecosystems is really valuable to you as a gamer?
Yeah, and it's so interesting. You say you comparing gaming with music, e-commerce, consumption of content like movies, and of course that can all be integrated into a broader gaming framework so that it can become
Absolutely.
the superset of all of that other content and the place where it's consumed.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the other applications that you see for this technology. Just looking out more broadly, where do you think we are here in 2022 as we have this conversation? What's the adoption curve look like? Where are we today, and where are we going?
Oh wow, Ash, I wish I could give you a good answer on that. I mean, I have no idea, and I think anybody that tells you that they do probably doesn't. It's just too early. I mean, there's the good news is that there is a lot of capital going into the space, and even more importantly, there are a lot of amazing entrepreneurs, amazing developers that have said, we do believe this is the future. We're going to dedicate our careers toward creating it. I think that's probably the most important thing. But you know, if I had to guess, I would say we are probably at that sort of like early 2000, 2001, where like Webvan and these companies, pets.com were like getting
Right.
all this money and all these valuations, but in reality weren't providing that much value to the world. And the real, Googles and Amazons were kind of not there yet, and still having to be developed, and could learn from the lessons of those companies and then create a better, more sustainable model. It reminds me, like when I look at an Axie Infinity, for example, there's if you think about play to earn, for example, the play to earn ecosystem requires that if somebody is taking a salary from the game, that means that they're removing the currency from that ecosystem to pay for their lifestyle. Well, if everybody can do that, where's the money actually coming from? And it requires that more people have to put money in. So it's really just, in my opinion, structured as a giant Ponzi. But I don't mean to call it a Ponzi scheme. It's just the nature of like supply and demand, and if that's how that ecosystem is actually working. And I think that we're going to start to see innovations where you try to make it, less of a Ponzi, and you try to make it something that's going to be more sustainable. And we're going to get to learn from these original iterations and examples of games, ecosystems, NFT collections, and see what actually works, what doesn't, iterate on it, and actually create something that can provide value to the world for longer than a year, or 2 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully decades, because this technology is powerful enough to do that.
Jake, you hit on the core paradox that I struggle with here at Real Vision every day. You see all of these interesting implementations of the technology. You look at any given protocol, and it's very difficult to know whether, to continue your metaphor, am I looking at pets.com or am I looking at Amazon? It's almost impossible very often to get a sense of the directionality. And yet, at the same time, while you're trying to make this evaluation, and if you sort of go back to 1999 for that frame of reference, when whether you're looking at Amazon.com or you're looking at Pets.com, it's so clear simultaneously that the technology that's driving it is going to change the world.
I couldn't agree more. And if you think about, I think it was Amazon versus it was like Toys R Us or Toys.com is one of those where I'm sure there was many differences, leadership, et cetera, but one of the amazing differences when you just look at luck and timing, or maybe
Yeah.
it's, when I say luck, maybe it's not luck in terms of it just popping down like a stork or something. Maybe it's more so more credit needs to be given to Jeff Bezos than I'm maybe giving in saying this, but it's amazing how they like raised money right before the crash. I mean, literally it was days before the crash, they raised a lot of money, whereas their competitors didn't. And it's just so interesting how these moments
Yeah.
in time, I'm not saying that was the sole reason that Amazon got big. Obviously, they're an amazing company and their operational processes are second to none. But it is fascinating how these moments in time, when you talk about which company is it going to be, and
Right.
you don't really know. Yeah, that's the exciting part, though, to be at the forefront, and to be able to help usher in this ecosystem that really does pride itself on having the power go back to the individual. I don't think it was ever intended for things to be exactly the way they are. I mean, even the World Wide Web is a open environment, whereas the tech companies that monopolize it have figured out that they don't have to be open. And the idea of going back toward open seems like it's going to allow for innovation to really thrive. And it's going to be a very exciting time where people can build whatever they choose to build, which is really cool, as opposed to being limited by what big tech allows them to build.
Yeah. By the way, talking of Amazon, I don't have the chart right in front of me, but if you bought Amazon at the peak in 99 or 2000, wherever it actually peaked, and you were underwater for something like 7, 8, 9 years. And Amazon, the great growth, the great success story to come out of the valley. So never mind the survivorship bias between Amazon and pets.com. If you bought Amazon 5 years later, you were underwater.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta be diamond hands when you really believe, I guess.
Yeah, that's one potential interpretation, I guess. And I think the other
Yeah.
is obviously all of the things that people who are like financial planners talk about when they talk about risk management, portfolio sizing, asset allocation, risk management, all of those things as well that we talk about here on Real Vision. So I want to ask you, so you're out there on the West Coast, you talk to people in the entertainment business, you talk to people in the music business. I'm a former guy who worked at a bank. You talk to much cooler people than I do. What's the conversation around these technologies right now? How are they thinking about NFTs in the metaverse? And ultimately, how are they committing capital to this ecosystem or not?
Well, they are so interested in it because they view it as a new revenue model, which it is. The challenge is that committing to it, really committing to it, Web3 is such a community driven approach that is very different than Web2. In Web2, you had to get really good at social media. And you think of the beginning of social media. I mean, artists used to have their managers like me post for social media for them. Some people still do that, right? By the way, they hire companies to do that. Most people have learned that you kind of got to do it yourself. And that's the really authentic and real way to do it. I think Web3 is kind of in that same boat right now, where an artist says, wow, I can make, 6 figures, 7 figures, maybe even 8 figures if I do X, Y, and Z. That's a great payday. NFTs are a no-brainer. I need to go into it. And the smart ones will start by inserting themselves in the ecosystem, buying some NFTs. But that's not enough, And I say smart because at least they're trying something. But like you have to really be part of it. You have to really care. And my interpretation, and maybe it's a little bit of a pessimistic one, is that artists and some of these entities that want to come into Web3, they're not necessarily community builders. And so you're going to have this moment where maybe they sell a bunch of NFTs. And I think that's what we saw really in 2021. I don't think we're seeing it as much in 2022. But in 2021, we saw so much of this. And then it's like, what do they do from there? Where do they go from there? And we don't have an answer because they didn't think that far ahead. They were looking to get the money from their fans. And that's just not sustainable. And so I think that these big companies, the artists themselves, everybody's very interested. Andreessen put out that report a couple of weeks ago about how much more money creators are making in Web3. It was staggering than making on Spotify or YouTube or Facebook. But I still believe that in order for us to go from the 22,400 creators that they referenced to 2 million creators, we're going to need some sort of tooling that enables artists to participate with their communities in ways that are different than Web 2 social media currently allows them to do it. I don't know exactly what type of value that is. It's almost like a glorified fan club. And the fan clubs never offered, in my opinion, that much value. They were typically a way to extract revenue from diehard fans that maybe were excited to get the t-shirt in the mail, and maybe they get a little birthday message or something. I just never saw those as really being highly valuable to the fans. And now we have a moment in time where you have to figure out, like, are you just selling the NFTs and the fans are just buying the NFTs so they get first access to tickets and stuff like that? Are they actually getting real access to the artist? The artist doesn't really want to supply more real access. The movie studio doesn't have more clips they can give out and more content they can create. Most of these entities, they need that content to be public in order for it to market, to grow the sort of entity in the brand. They need this stuff to be open and available to everybody. So the idea of putting things behind an NFT paywall or something, it feels so Web 2 to me. It feels so like the freemium model. I'm not really a big fan of like owning the NFT to get this necessarily. So I think it's going to be an interesting road and ride for them with a lot of starts and stops. And it's going to be very similar to the way in which the music industry moved from CDs to downloads to streaming and fought it every step of the way. I mean, it was unbelievable managing a recording artist 7-8 years ago and trying to convince, Sony Music that streaming was the future. They were still prioritizing downloads. I mean, even up to
and sued their own customers. It's
absurd. It was just absurd to watch. And so I think that that's kind of why I've shifted out of entertainment. Is I want to be more at the forefront. I want to help build those bridges. I don't want to be the one that has to debate people in my own industry about whether this is the future. I know it is, and I want to figure out how to find it.
We were talking a little bit off camera about mobile. It's interesting to me. So much of the experience around NFTs seems to be based, in the desktop environment, the laptop environment. I think largely because the UI issue is a little bit challenging. Where are you guys right now with mobile, and what do you think is happening in the mobile space more generally for NFTs?
Yeah, it's a great question. There is no dominant mobile app in NFTs today. And the reason is because you would think it would be OpenSea because they're one of the only, Web3 products with genuine product market fit. And OpenSea's value is that you can buy and sell NFTs, but you can't do that in an app that's coming out of the Apple App Store where they're charging, 30% for digital goods. So that is, I think, slowed the adoption a little bit of the mobile NFT space, which is unfortunate, back to big tech companies controlling innovation. Yeah. So we've decided to go very hard at mobile. Our original product was desktop. I'm proud of that. And I think that if we would have gone mobile first, it would have been very challenging to get people to download an app and sign in with their wallet. We focused on desktop, getting people to sign in with their wallet. Would they be willing to connect their wallet with a $250,000 to multi-million-dollar asset to a platform that was new? And we've built up that trust now. And so now that we've built that trust, we understand you can't be a chat app without a mobile app. It's kind of ridiculous, almost an oxymoron, if you will. And our new app is really focused on allowing you to track your NFT collection, track your portfolio, get real-time push notifications around when a collection goes up or down 10%, so you're notified in real time. And it's also going to give you all of your announcements in one feed, so you don't have to go to like 80 different Discord servers to find out what's going on with your collection. And so really trying to help people who are, probably working full-time jobs, and that NFTs is not their real job, wink, 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 even though they're probably spending more time on it, but giving them the ability where you don't have to like refresh floor prices every single night, like a million times. You're actually going to be able to just get notified when things are changing in real time, we think is the first step toward building that mobile experience.
Jake, great conversation. It's a pleasure to have you here on Real Vision Crypto.
Thanks so much,
Final thoughts, key takeaways for our audience.
There is a lot of wealth, excitement, energy, innovation that is going to be created in this space over the next few years. And if you're somebody who's wondering if now's the time to come in, there's just never going to be a better time, regardless if we're in a bull market, a bear market. The sooner you make the jump, the sooner you're going to be at the forefront of technology that's really changing the world.
Yeah. Jake Udell, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Ash. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Awesome. Bye.
Hey, visionaries. Thank you for tuning in. For more free crypto content like this, head over to realvision.io. betterment.com/crypto. You'll get early access to the most brilliant minds in the space to cut through the noise, get in-depth analysis, and get you ahead of the curve with unbiased insights.